Welcome to the Easier Way to Sell presentation of Close the Deal Without Selling. Here's your host and developer of the Easier Way to Sell, Krieger.
Hey, this is Krieger. Welcome back. For you new listeners of the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast, and even some of you listening veterans, we'll begin this episode with a look back at the development phase of the Easier Way to Sell. Then we'll go over an effective and easy-to-remember process that will make you even more likely to achieve your desired goals and outcomes. The last segment covers a heady concept of who you're being when you're communicating and selling. Remember, first and foremost, you are a human being. Are you being someone with an internal dialogue reminding you that someday, maybe, you hope you'll be good at sales and communicating or any other task, but right now you need more of something like money, education, or contacts before you can do that? Well, I say, au contraire, mon frere, and you'll find out why later in the podcast. Now, let's look back to the birth of the Easier Way to Sell. I just realized that as we get closer to the 20th episode of Close the Deal Without Selling, and my goodness, we're almost there, that for some of you who are newer to the podcast, I really haven't talked about the birth of the sales model that I'm suggesting all of you use. So here's a quick, no pun intended, a quick review. In the late 1970s, I worked in the real estate industry, and by the late 1980s, I ran a small financial services firm. You name the financial product and we sold it. And I trained the sales force and they were good. They were good at convincing and influencing. And it was during these years, while training and selling financial products, I stopped enjoying the sales game. Here I was, supposedly an expert in convincing and influencing. Here I was training people to effectively convince and influence. And here I was unhappy with selling anything. Because selling started to remind me of a theater audition. It was like I was going in front of a new audience every sales call. I would finish my rehearsed presentation only to hear, that was a great presentation. I would go through my flip chart and expect to hear applause, yet too much of the time the prospect would look at me and say, "Thanks for all the information. We need to think it over." And even when I got a yes, I wasn't happy because I knew I'd have to go out and do it again tomorrow. I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power, and in that book, near the very end, he tells a story of two great orators, two great speakers, Demosthenes and Cicero. Demosthenes stands up in front of the marketplace and gives this full, wonderful speech, and at the end of it, the crowd yells, "Great speech!" And then Cicero gets up and he gives a full-throated oration, after which the crowd yells, "Let's march!" Here I was after all those years learning how to convince and influence, and I was stuck in the Twilight Zone sales world of, "What a great speech!" Here I was after all the years of learning how to convince and influence and teach people how to convince and influence when it dawned on me. And I've mentioned this before, I didn't like the feeling of being convinced and influenced. I didn't like to be sold to. I didn't like it when someone was trying to sell me something. So, why should my prospects? But that posed a problem because if you have to convince and influence to sell, and nobody likes to be convinced and influenced, and you have to sell to live, what are you going to do? So I went back to the drawing board of communications theories and models and designed a non-adversarial communications process. I designed this model to produce predictable outcomes in any type of communication. On paper, it looked like it just might work wonderfully. And what occurred to me is that it looked like it might work wonderfully for selling and marketing pretty much anything. The model I created puts the most frustrating portions of the selling process, the presentation and the close, into the realm of the prospect. It's now their job to convince me rather than the other way around. It was their job to convince me that they needed what I had to offer. To accomplish this, I had to talk less. I had to ask the right questions. And it was in 1990 when I really put this model into practice. One of the business affiliations we had at the firm was with a national estate planning service. We marketed and sold living trusts. We did the selling and the attorneys would prepare the trust. We were provided with a wonderfully designed and beautifully scripted presentation, but I decided that I was going to try and sell a different way. I was going to skip the canned presentation. I was going to have the prospect give me the presentation. And I started off the initial meeting with this question, and my life has never been the same since. And that question was, why do you need a living trust? And they would tell me. Most of these trust prospects had read the book written by the founder of this specific living trust service. They were well educated before they came to the office. They told me everything I needed to know to decide whether or not they were a qualified buyer of our product or service. And then I asked, our trust costs around $2,000 and you can purchase a living trust from Reader's Digest for under $100. Why would you want this one? They would tell me. They were telling me what information they felt was important from their point of view, rather than me giving them information I thought they should know from my point of view. You know what I mean? The type of information you would give in a canned presentation. What a difference this made. There were no objections. The objections disappeared, and stress disappeared from pretty much all of my prospect meetings. My close rate went to over 90%. For the first time, I was using a method of communication that allowed me to do my sales job without convincing or influencing. The sales staff told me they would say, cha-ching, every time I had a living trust prospect because I closed almost every one of them. And I closed them by asking the same question I suggested you ask, and that's, what's our next step? I had developed a way to close the deal without selling. It was the birth of the easier way to sell, and it's my privilege to share that model with you. That's what this podcast is all about. I got a note from a listener in Montreal, Canada. His name is Pete, and Pete writes, I'm enjoying the podcast, but I haven't used your system on a sales call because I'm concerned I'll come off like an interrogator. Pete, you're not the first student of this system to voice this concern, but let me ask you, how closely related do you consider the words doctor and interrogator? And before you answer, remember, a doctor's job is to uncover your problem, whereas an interrogator would probably be more likely to beat it out of you. Think like a doctor. Doctors are curious, authentic, and neutral, and they're apart from the problem because they're clear that their job is uncovering and helping you resolve your issue. Remember, in the YES formula, R and R is the very first ingredient, rapport and relationship. Rapport and relationship allows you to create an environment in which your questions will be answered more honestly. Those questions, if they come off like an interrogator, I'm inviting you to go back and find a family member, find a friend, and ask them to sit with you during a practice run and then have them give you feedback as to whether or not you sound like an interrogator or a doctor. And remember, once the environment of rapport is created, you no longer have to break through your prospect sales defenses. They'll disappear because they understand that you're there to help them solve their problem, not yours. Not so much with an interrogator. So what I'm going to suggest to you is drop the interrogator conversation in your internal dialogue and think like a doctor. I haven't talked to you yet about SMART goals. I think SMART goals are a very intelligent, dare I say, smart way to go about reaching your goals because it gives you a set of guidelines that helps you once again stay on track to be successful. And when you make your goals, you have to make sure that they're SMART goals. And each SMART goal is made up of 5 ingredients based on the initial SMART. So you have S, which means you need to be specific, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is realistic, and T is timely. So let's start with the S in SMART. Are your goals specific enough? If your goal is to expand your business next year, that's a great goal, but it's not very specific. A more specific version of your goal might be, I'm going to expand my business by adding 60 clients in the 12-month period between January and December. Now, that's a specific goal, but is it measurable? Being measurable is the second ingredient of SMART goals. That's what the M stands for. It's measurable. And what will you use to measure your success? Because, as the saying goes, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Now, you have your goal of 60 new clients in a 12-month period, and that's certainly measurable. You can break it down to monthly measurements, or you can use annual measurements. And these measurements allow you to monitor your data so you kind of know when your success occurs. So, your now measurable goal reads like this. I'll expand my business by adding 60 new clients in a 12-month period between January and December at a rate of 5 new clients per month. Next comes A. Make your goals attainable. Is your goal attainable? Can you reach your goal using the systems and resources you have in place, or are you setting yourself up for a disappointment? Because it's hard to stay committed to goals that are too far out of reach. And here's an example of a goal that may not be readily attainable. I will get 60 new clients this month. As well-meaning as you might be, your subconscious has a way of reminding you that the goal of 60 new clients in a month is probably out of reach. But realistic does not mean easy to achieve. Realistic in this case means that the goal is doable. Your goal should be powerful enough to put you to the test. Your goal should motivate you. A futile goal can break the spirit of both you and your team. So devise a strategy to make your goal realistic. Think of it like this. Based on your past performance, is it realistic to believe that by doing what you've been doing up to now, that your efforts will result in 5 new clients per month? What if the greatest number of clients you've ever gotten in a month is 2? Moving up to a goal of 5 might not be realistic. A goal of 3 might be more in keeping with your reality, but would still represent an increase of 50% in your business. Make your goals realistic and make them attainable. Next comes the T for timely. Goals that are timely are set within a time frame for completion. And it was suggested in an earlier episode that you put an end date on a project to give you a clear target at which to aim, because without a time limit, there's no sense of urgency. So check your goals against this SMART formula. S.M.A.R.T. Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are they realistic? And are they timely? When you check your goals against the SMART formula, you'll give yourself an even better shot at success. So here's the tip. Create well-defined goals, because a well-defined goal is a valuable asset. A well-defined goal is the first step in the creation of your roadmap to success. Just make sure those goals are SMART. Let's do a little follow-up on SMART goals. To be a SMART goal, your goal must be specific. SMART goals must be written down because an unwritten goal is merely a wish. SMART goals must be measurable. You need to identify milestones, events, and dates, and clarify the means by which you'll measure your different phases of success. Your SMART goal needs to be action-oriented. We want to avoid vague phrases like, I will work harder on my questioning skills. Substitute an action phrase like, I'll learn and use 3 new open-ended questions per day. Now, the R in SMART reminds you to make certain that your goals are realistic and reachable. Do you have the resources and the systems in place to achieve your desired outcome? Your goals must be reachable. Unreachable goals are as useless as goals that can be reached too easily. Is your goal timely? And it's best to consider all aspects of what we refer to as time. Here's a powerful question to ask of yourself. Do I have the time to take this project on? Or have I sabotaged the goal by assigning so much time that the goal becomes meaningless? And here's an example. We've settled on a project completion date sometime in the future. That goal's not timely and it's certainly not specific. Here's a story we'll call 10 in a month. A mortgage broker brought in a training consultant to help boost sales. The consultant asked each of the sales staff to submit a goal for the upcoming month that would increase their loan deals and their income. A team member, we'll call her Sandy, submitted a goal of 24 deals, and that was the highest number that was submitted. The consultant told Sandy that he was impressed with her goal of 24 deals. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a roll of bills, and proceeded to place 10 $100 bills in front of Sandy. He wanted to encourage Sandy to reach her goal and told her she could go ahead and keep the money while she worked on her goal. Sandy was pleased. The consultant then told Sandy that if she didn't reach the goal of 24 deals in the upcoming month, she'd have to return the $1,000 plus $1,000 of her own. The smile on Sandy's face disappeared. The consultant asked Sandy if she was certain she could achieve her goal of 24 deals. Sandy replied, "I really don't know." He asked, "What's the most deals you've closed in a month?" 8, replied Sandy. Was your goal of 24 your real intention, or was your real intention to impress me and your colleagues? A light went off for Sandy, and she said, "Can I change my goal to 10? Now that was smart. So here's a question. Who do you declare yourself to be? The intention of this segment is to have you recognize and understand the power of a personal declaration. Do you exist in a someday, maybe, I hope, time-based internal conversation where you're waiting for the right moment to be all that you can be? Or are you open to the possibility that instead of waiting, you can declare that moment to actually be here right now? This segment will help you examine your internal dialogue as it relates to your effectiveness. If you were asked what you needed in order to be as effective as you would like, you might say, well, if I only had more skill in X, choose your area of focus, then I could finally do what it is that I need to do, and then I could be as successful as I would like. If I had, then I can do, then I could be. Well, most people communicate their needs through this time-based filter. If I had A, then I could do B, and then I could be C. In real-life terms, it might sound like this. If I had better phone skills, I could do more prospecting, and I would have more sales appointments. The focus is backwards. Think of it this way. If you ask people to point in the direction of the past, most will hitch their thumb over their shoulder and gesture behind them. And let's say for a moment that's true. If your past is behind you, that means that the future is in front of you. And stick with me here. If that's the case, your goal of living a have, do, be existence in which you claim that if you had the wherewithal to do what you needed to do, you could someday maybe be who you wanted to be, is backwards. This form of internal communication goes directly against the perceived flow of time. You are, in essence, swimming against the natural flow of time. Your current internal dialogue runs a conversation about certain areas of your life where you have a perceived lack of effectiveness now that will hold you back in the future. Like, I'm not good at time management, but someday I'll be better. You want to switch this around. Declare yourself to be effective already in the present with room to grow. If today you said, I manage my time effectively, I could be a lot better, but who I am is an effective time manager? If you actually declared your excellence in the now, you'll move that much closer to your desired outcome almost automatically. This is an example of declaring who you are being in the positive. If today you said, I have great skills, I could be a lot better, but who I am is an effective salesperson, what does an effective salesperson do? An effective salesperson continues with their personal development, they continue prospecting, they continue to bring in new clients or customers, and what do they have? They have what somebody who declares themselves to be an effective salesperson has. Declare yourself to be an effective salesperson. Do what an effective salesperson does. Have what an effective salesperson has. Your personal declaration must be followed by a personal constitution. Now, most people haven't constituted themselves as successful. They have no code of success-based conduct in the now. Most individuals are unconsciously constituted as someone who's waiting for failure to materialize. These individuals believe that they don't yet have what they need to make their personal declaration. Here's an example of a be-do-have scenario. You have a clear declaration followed by the act of constitution. Remember, this is not a have, do, be. This is a be, do, have scenario. The United States declared independence from Great Britain in 1776, but the Founding Fathers didn't really know what independence meant. They had ideas of what the new independent nation would become, but the details were sketchy, to say the least. They were certainly aware that their declaration had been treasonous. They knew if they were caught, they'd be executed. Yet, they still declared the 13 colonies to be free and a separate nation. How was a free and separate nation supposed to look? They didn't know, and they didn't wait to find out all the answers. They declared themselves to be independent and then proceeded solemnly and with clear purpose to create a constitution as their set of guidelines, their set of rules. The Constitution is a set of ideals, norms, and rules based on an image of who the Founding Fathers declared themselves to be and who they declared this new nation to be. In a short period of time, they were able to constitute what the independent country looked like. They created an ideal-filled document that now has survived nearly 250 years. The question is, when you go out and use the system, who are you declaring yourself to be? Are you declaring yourself as a powerful problem solver who's perfecting your use of a new communications and selling system? Are you someone who's waiting for the right time to live in the future you say you want? I urge you to make a declaration of not who you need to be someday, maybe you hope, but who you are that is producing the outcomes and goals you've created. Think of it this way: whatever the mind can conceive, the mind can achieve. Okay, that's enough for this episode, and next week we're going to go deeper into the rapport and relationship conversation that's the keystone for the success of this system. Next time on Close the Deal Without Selling, we have an interview with another friend. You know, this rapport and relationship thing really works. And we're going to discuss our history of being with each other over the years. We actually went to college together. We went to high school together. I've known this man a long time, and I think you'll really enjoy this interview. So until then, this is Ike Krieger. See you next time.